I can't get these memories out of my mind, and some kind of madness has started to evolve.
Anybody remember anything we talked about last week? Vaguely?
I wonder what it could be.
We talked about science and the brain.
Okay.
And
Your bad thoughts.
Okay.
Physically making.
Okay, so does anybody remember the number of how many non-conscious thoughts go through the average brain per second?
50,000.
Wrong. I saw your hand first.
400 billion?
Yes, 400 billion. Do you guys believe that? That still blows my mind that with you not thinking, your mind is having 400 billion thoughts per second. How many of you have ever counted to 400 billion? Okay. Okay, guys, I just want you to know the incredible nature that God has given you. The brain that is inside of you is probably the most incredible thing in God's creation. So that translates to about 2,000 conscious thoughts per second. And we talked about how some study that I have no idea how to prove or see if it's correct in any way, but one of the things I read was as many as 80% of our thoughts are negative. And guys, we looked at the difference even, okay, so just to kind of backtrack and get us all on the same page. We talked about how a thought is an actual thing that happens in your brain. Like you can actually look at a brain and see thoughts in the form of neurons. And I know this sounds kind of nerdy, but we looked at the difference between a healthy neuron and an unhealthy one. And a lot of the reading I've done says that these toxic thoughts create negative or unhealthy neuron connections, which means it actually affects your thinking. And with every thought, your body actually releases different chemicals and things like that. So there is actually a physical, tangible reaction to negative thoughts in the form of negative or unhealthy things your body releases to try to compensate. So when you have a negative thought, your heartbeat immediately increases, which creates more stress, right? And it snowballs to the point where our thoughts can paralyze us. And we talked about using the idea of March Madness, this chaotic madness that's going on in our heads every day. And it usually starts small. It may start by waking up in the morning and you having to walk by a mirror and you happen to see yourself. And what you see when you look in the mirror is not, man, I look good. You see every imperfection. And you see imperfections that aren't even there because you're your worst critic. And before your day even starts well, your mind is already in the negative. And usually when you think negatively in the morning, it gets worse throughout the day, right? If you have a bad time going to school, if you get a ticket in the morning, your day's not going to get better unless you make an active effort for it to. If you lock your keys in your car in the morning, your day will not get better unless you actively try to make it. Okay? When your 2-year-old daughter comes in your room at 3 in the morning and wakes you up, it's really hard to make the next day good.
Hey,
that's weird. Okay, so just
Stop waking me up, man.
so we talked about the idea that God has given you the ability, like Scripture says, to take your own thoughts captive. So there's this thing in your head called the frontal lobe, and it's kind of where all your thoughts and emotions and everything kind of come together. And we're given the ability to essentially step outside of ourselves and look at our thoughts. So we actually get the picture of the angel and the demon on our shoulders. We can actually step away and look at our decision-making process. Look at our thought process. God has given us that ability. So that means, unfortunately, when we have negative thoughts, when we have things that we let get us down, It's our choice, essentially, because we've been given the ability to overcome those thoughts. Okay? And we talked about this idea of the angel and the devil on your shoulder, like in the cartoons. And I believe it'd be a lot nicer if the angel and the devil were on your shoulders, because you could recognize in black and white which is good, which is bad. And you can, knock the little devil guy off and go about your business. However, unfortunately, with this madness we're talking about, the voice comes from inside of you, right? And it doesn't say, you suck. It speaks in the first person. It says, I suck. It says, I'm not good enough. It says, I'm not smart enough. It says, I'm not talented enough. It says, I'm a loser. I don't have any friends. No one would like me if. All these things. And guys, I want you to know that those thoughts are not your natural thoughts. They've been planted there. And unfortunately, the more negative thoughts we have, the more toxic thoughts we have, the more of those thoughts are in that rotation of the 400 billion things that are going on without our controlling them. They're just in there. Your brain thinks about them without you even knowing it. And because you've been negative in the past, because you've been frustrated in the past, the more you have, the more of those thoughts are in the cycle, which you can't control. Does that mean your past will destroy you? Absolutely not, but it does create an issue that we need to overcome. Okay, so I'm using a book called Crash the Chatterbox for a lot of this. It's a great book. Pick it up if you want to, if you're a reader. And it just talks about that chatter that goes on in our heads all day long. And the reality is, it never stops. So when I'm up here, it's still going. You don't know what you're talking about. They're not interested. It happens all the time on Sunday mornings when I'm singing. It says, I suck. It says I'm not good enough. I don't know why these people pay me to do this. And it never stops. And you might have a similar experience where you're playing a sport and you just constantly have to battle these thoughts that tell you you're not good enough. Am I the only one, or does this happen to other people? Okay, at least a couple of you are honest. So, this book lays out 4 statements that God makes, or 4 promises that we have that can combat this madness that we deal with every day. Okay? So the first one, as y'all saw on the little fancy thing, we're getting pretty high tech, is I am. I am. And we're looking at the story of Moses tonight. And just a little background on Moses. Moses was an Israelite. And the Israelites at this time were slaves to the Egyptians. So the Pharaoh ruled them, and because he was threatened by these Israelite people, he declared that if there was a baby born in the Israelites, that it was to be thrown in the Nile. And babies can't swim. So he didn't want them to multiply because he was threatened, because God blessed everything they did. Even in slavery, God was blessing them. So he felt threatened, so he tried to take away the growth of this people. So one lady had a baby and she refused to throw it in the Nile. So she hid the baby as long as she could, but they're kind of loud, and you can't rationalize and say, I know you're upset, I know you're hungry, but these people are going to kill you if you don't stop crying, so please stop crying. Babies don't understand that, so they keep crying. So she couldn't keep Moses quiet anymore, so she had to do something. So what she did was she put the baby in a basket and put it in the river. So she kind of did what they were telling her to do, but she gave her child a chance. And Pharaoh's daughter came to take a bath in the river and heard the baby and found it. So this baby, she took it in. And she actually got his mother, through God's providence, to be the midwife or the nurse for this baby. So she got to stay with her baby even longer. But Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace. So he learned all these things. He was an Israelite. But essentially, he grew up like an Egyptian. He had all the best things, the nicest things, education and things like that. But one day, Moses saw some Egyptians beating one of the Israelites. And he got so angry that he killed this soldier. And he buried the body. And then the next day he realized that people had found out because there were two Israelites arguing. And he walked over and said, "Hey guys, break it up. What's wrong?" And they said, "What are you going to do? Kill us too?" And so he knew that his secret was out. He knew that someone was going to find out of his murder. And if the Egyptians found out, he'd be in a lot of trouble. So he takes off and leaves. And he goes to this place called Midian. And he meets a woman and gets married. Okay? So basically he goes from being in the palace to a shepherd. So he tends sheep for his father-in-law in this place called Midian in the wilderness outside of Mount Sinai. Okay, and so this is where we pick up the story. That's the background. So we pick up the story in Exodus chapter 3. And it says, it's up here so you can read along with me. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, "I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am, do not come any closer." God said, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go, and I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. Okay, let's take a break there and see what's going on. That's a lot of reading, and I'm sorry. Usually I try to keep it short, but I felt like we needed to hear that kind of story in the setting that's going on. So Moses is minding his own business in the wilderness, and God calls out to him and says, I'm going to send you back to the people that you ran away from because you were afraid of them. And you're going to go to the person that you were most afraid of and tell him to let all that free labor that's helping him build his pyramids and things like that, you're going to ask him to let them go. And if you were in Moses' position, what would you say? Okay, most people would say no. Everyone, Maverick would say yes, because I don't know why. I would say no. I would say, God, do you have the right person? Are you sure that you want me to go? Okay, so basically God says, you're going to go and you're going to ask him, and then he's going to tell you no. Yes?
What if, like, that was a really long what he told him to say. What if he said that wrong?
We'll get to that. It wasn't that long, though.
I've been like, can you text that to me?
Okay, so let's continue into chapter 4. That gives you some idea. So God says, Moses, I need you to go. Moses said, who am I to go? You know, I ran away from that place because I was afraid they were going to kill me. And now you're sending me back there with a message that will make them want to kill me. Okay, so in chapter 4, Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? A staff, he replied. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Natural reaction when a stick turns into a snake. Okay, then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. This first test of faith. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. This, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Then the Lord said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. Leprosy was a disease that made basically your limbs shrivel up and fall off. Okay, so he took his hand out and he has leprosy, which is a disease that is very contagious and not curable other than miracles at this time. Okay, so that would not be fun, right? Put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. Now put it back into your cloak, he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. But Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. Okay. So how many times did God have to ask Moses to go? How many times did Moses make excuses? 4. 4 times. Good job. Nailed it. Okay. I was making sure it wasn't up there. Okay. So God says, I want you to go. And he says, who am I to go? Who am I that the king of these people is going to listen to me? And God says, I'm sending you, so I'll take care of that part. You just need to go. And Moses is like, well, what if I go to the Israelites and say that God sent me, and they say, well, who is God, and what makes us believe that he sent you? Do you even know God? So basically Moses is asking, what if I don't have a close enough relationship to you? Then it goes on, and God says, well, do this and do this and do this. And then Moses said, like me, because I mess up words a lot and everything, he's like, I can't talk well. Like I'm not a public speaker. I'm not good at this stuff. And I've never been good at this stuff. And I think it's funny how he says it. He says, hold on, sorry. Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. So he's like, I've never been good at it before, and I don't see that anything's changed in this last 5 minutes since I've been talking to you. So maybe I'm not the right guy for this job. And God said, I gave you a mouth, I gave you eyes, I gave you ears, I gave you the ability to do everything you have. And if you trust me, I'll take care of your speaking problem too. I'm waiting for him to take care of mine so I don't stutter and mess up my words all the time, because that can be very dangerous when you're talking in front of people. There are things that you can mess up that you can't come back from. Okay? So guys, Moses said, I can't speak. You want me to go talk to this guy, and I'm not good at talking. And God said, I'll take care of it. Just trust me, and I'll make you good at speaking. So Moses would benefit from this, right? And tragically, the next thing Moses says is, with all due respect, there's got to be someone better. Please send someone else. Please send someone else. And God actually gets frustrated at this time. And he said, no matter what I tell you, you're not going to trust me. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to make you say yes or no. And he said, I'm going to give you your brother. He's coming. He's already on his way. So it's not like you can say no and I'm going to not invite him to come. He's already on his way, so you've got to decide whether you're going to obey me or not. You've got to decide whether you're going to trust me enough to speak to Aaron and let him fight your battle or not. And obviously Moses goes, but we can learn a lot from this situation. Okay, so the first thing he said is, who am I? Who am I that I should go? And how does God respond? Anybody know? When Moses says, I'm inadequate, what does God say? He doesn't say you're adequate. He doesn't say, Moses, you can do it. He doesn't give him a pep talk. He says, I'm adequate. So when we're inadequate, that doesn't affect the fact that God is completely adequate for everything. And Moses said, what if they don't believe me? What if my relationship with you is not strong enough for them to actually trust me and respect me? And I know we've all been in that situation, right? We've all had this feeling like, I can't even read my Bible every day. How am I gonna share Christ's love with somebody when I can't even improve the relationship that I have with him? When I can't even do the things that I need to do to grow. And God basically says, I've chosen you. This is what you're going to say. When they ask who sent you, say, I am. I am. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And then he says, I can't speak well. And God said, I gave you your mouth. I can help you with that. I'm powerful if you trust me. And the issue is our trust, right? Because God is adequate. God is present. And God chose Moses. Okay, so let's focus on this idea. Okay, so honestly, to me, the first time I read this, and Moses said, who should I tell them told me to come? And what if they ask for your name? And God says, I am who I am. And honestly, my mind goes to who's on first? What's on second? Like this idea that what do you do with that? I'm going to tell them I am sent me? What does that even mean? So I started looking at things, and I started reading commentaries and stuff. And the idea is, I am is what? Present tense. I am is in the now. It's not I was, not I will be, it's I am. And one thing I think is interesting is he goes on to say, this is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. So what we've got here is the focus on the fact that wherever you are, God is there. God is present. I am. Not I will be. Not I can take care of your problems, but I am. I am with you. And the presence, the fact that no matter where you are, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter how many voices in your head tell you you're not good enough, you have a God that's there with you right now. He didn't leave you when you started having toxic thoughts. He's not waiting for you to get your crap together and then he'll come in your life once you have everything fixed and taken care of and take credit for it. He's right there now with you, wherever you are. I told you guys, one of the things that convinced me to follow Jesus in the first place was this idea in John. We have the shortest verse in the Bible. Can anybody tell me what the shortest verse in the Bible says?
Jesus wept.
There you go. Jesus wept. And the fact is, Jesus wept knowing that the guy that these people were weeping over, he was about to raise from the dead. So he knew how the story was going to end, but he still took the time in the process to cry with them because he knew he was hurt. They were hurting. So we have a God that whatever we're going through, no matter if he knows the outcome or not. A lot of times people come to me, especially teenagers, and they're crying and they're upset because the relationship broke up. And I have a tendency to think, well, it's never going to work anyway. So give it a couple weeks and you'll find someone else on Facebook and it'll be all better again. That's like my thought process sometimes, and I apologize for that. But God, knowing the outcome, knowing that he's got someone better for you, knowing that he's got someone in the future for a spouse that will make you happier than that guy you met a couple weeks ago, but you said you were in love with. Like God knows how it's going to end, but he still spends the time with you while you're sad to feel your emotion, to experience the emotion with you, and to walk with you through the pain, through the joy, through everything. He chooses to walk with us. And that's the reason I believe in this God. Because he put on flesh and he came and he experienced all the emotions that we deal with every day. He was fully human. He experienced everything you go through. The hurts, the fears, the feeling of inadequacy. I'm sure that voice was horribly loud in Jesus' ears because, guys, Satan did not want him to succeed. So if you think the mental attack that you go through every day is vicious, is terrible, imagine what he went through because it had to be so much worse. Imagine that and then think about the fact that he says, I am who I am. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, I am. I'm right there with you. I won't forget. I want change. And here's the great thing. He comes to a murderer who doesn't feel good enough, who doesn't feel like he can speak well enough, who's run away from his past. And he says, I've chosen you. So guess what? Moses can't say, yeah, I've got a pretty good resume, God. I can see why you'd want me to do this. No, he's thinking, what are you thinking, God? I'm spitting like crazy. I apologize. He's like, what can you possibly be thinking sending me? It's not like I have anything good in my past to offer anybody. And guys, I think that's where a lot of us are. When God calls you to do something, even when a teacher or a coach or anybody asks you to do something, your first response is usually, I'm really going to mess this up. Right? Like that's kind of my idea most of the time. My first reaction is, I'm not good enough. We talked in the identity series about the question that drives a lot of our motives, and it's like, am I sufficient? Am I good enough? Do I have what it takes to reach the goals inside of me? And this is what Moses is struggling with, and I think this is what we struggle with that gives those voices power every day. Am I good enough? And I think it's incredible that God's responses to Moses were basically, I gave you everything you have, and I can give you more if you just trust me. Basically, he's given Moses a blank check and signing his name on it and says, whatever you need to accomplish what I'm calling you to do, which will be fulfilling to you because I created you, I'm giving you a blank check to give you everything you need to do that. It may not be everything you want, but I'm going to give you everything you need if you just trust me and take this step. And tragically, Moses still says, please look for someone else. God, I know that you trust me. And guys, I think a lot of us can believe these promises that say God is sufficient. And God is all we'll ever need. And God is powerful. And God is perfect and things like that. Think about the idea that God says, I am light. It's easy to believe, right? If he created everything, yeah, he can be light. But when we get to the point in Scripture where he says, you are the light of the world, we think, whoa, he must be talking to someone else. So we believe his promise is about him, but we have a lot of trouble believing his promise is about us. But he says, I am and I will. Okay, guys, there's another call. And this is another call very similar to Moses, very similar in response. And this is a man named Jeremiah. And just to give you some context on Jeremiah, basically, Jeremiah is a prophet, not a bullfrog. He's a prophet. And God says, I'm going to give you this message that everyone is going to hate. And you're going to go to them and you're going to share this message that no one's going to receive. People aren't going to enjoy this. But I'll be with you. Okay? So Israel was basically very disobedient. And God was saying, Jeremiah, go, give them a final warning that, they're being disobedient and I'm aware of it and bad things are going to happen because of that. Give them this final warning, but most of them aren't going to take you seriously. Okay? So here is what happens in Jeremiah 1, chapter 1, verses 4 through 9. It said, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I've put my words in your mouth. So once again, we have another call and another response of God, I'm not good enough. I know you think you know what you're doing, God, but you don't because I suck. And that's most of the time our response. God, I've tried this Christian thing before. I went to camp, I came home, and I tried my best to obey you, to be obedient, and I failed miserably. You don't want me, you want someone else. And God said, while you were still in the womb, before you were even born, I set you apart. I set you apart. I knew you before you were born. I set you apart, appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Guys, we're talking about a God who chose you before you did anything good or bad. Okay, how many of you have seen the show The Voice? Anybody? Okay, everybody. That's awesome. Okay, so one thing kind of attracts me to this show. I've had several friends from back in the day who have been on it, so I started watching it. And one thing I think is cool is, guys, we're so affected and influenced by how people look that even go to churches. You don't see many unattractive people on the big churches' worship teams. We were talking about it earlier. They get pretty people. Like we're vain and we make decisions based on that. And one thing I like about this show is they have blind auditions. So when the person starts singing, there are 4 judges. And their backs, they're in these chairs and you've seen it, their back is to them. So they start singing and the judges have to make a decision whether they want to work with them or not based solely on their voice. The only thing they know is song choice and how they sound. And then they have this button that they hit and the chair spins around and they can see the person, and there's this thing on the bottom of the chair that says, "I choose you," or something like that. And I think that's an awesome picture of being chosen based on one talent. But here's the deal. I think a lot of times we walk around in our lives and we have people sitting on those chairs in our heads, and we're trying to do things that will make them turn around and choose us. Can anybody relate to that? So we want our parents to hit that button and turn around and see us. We want our coaches, we want our teachers, we want our friends, we want that girl or guy that we've been stalking on every form of social media for the last few months to notice us and hit that button and turn around and like us. Okay, well, we'll have an altar call later. Okay, so the cool thing about this show is they spin around. So guys, focus in for a few minutes. I'm almost finished. We have this idea that if we can perform well enough, if we can sing good enough, that they're going to hit that button, turn around, and they're going to want us, right? So we go through life like it's this performance, and we're trying to get people to give us affirmation. We're trying to get people to hit this button and turn around so we know that we're worth something, right? And the problem is, many times those people that we want to turn around, they don't know that we need that. They don't know that that's what we're craving. They don't know that that's what we're trying to do through everything. Okay? So we have this problem where we're trying to get them to affirm us and tell us we're good enough, and they have no idea that we're even looking to them for that affirmation. And what's worse, this madness in our head has taken away their button. Like they can't physically press that button because it doesn't exist. Because that voice in our head will just rationalize it away, and they say, yeah, well, it's because they have to love me. I'm their child. Or it's because I go to a small school and they have no one else to choose from. It's because, and yada, 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 whatever it is, that voice, those voices attack and they say, yeah, you thought that was affirmation, but you're still not good enough. So what we end up doing is doing anything and everything we can to try to get that attention. Sometimes it means cheating. Sometimes it means compromising our character. Sometimes it means pushing ourselves beyond the limits to perform for people. And guys, it's exhausting. And it's exhausting because there's a God who's present right now who said, before you did anything good or bad, while you were still in the womb, I chose you. And guess what? If you look for my approval, you'll always have it. You'll always have it, and you won't have to look to all these other people, and then you can enjoy those relationships because you get your affirmation from me. You know you're loved, and you can be secure in every other relationship. Guys, that's what I want. And I hope you guys realize that that's what we need. Because if we look for approval from this world, we're really wasting our time. Because even if they like us today, they'll forget about us tomorrow. But we have a God that says, I am. I'm right there with you wherever you are. And I hit that button a long time ago, which means there's nothing you have done in your past that's affected it. And there's nothing you can do in the future to make me turn my back on you. That's God's message to us. That's the message of the Bible. There's nothing you can do to make God turn his back on you. No, that doesn't mean there aren't consequences for our actions. But it means we can trust in that relationship. It means we can be confident and have faith in the fact that it's not about our performance, but it's actually who we are that God likes. So we're going to end tonight with a song, and you guys can go ahead and come up. And guys, as we're singing this song, it might be a new song to some of you, but the words are very simple. And as you're thinking about it, I just want you to think about the promises that God has made to you. He says things like, I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you hope and a future, plans to benefit you, to prosper you, and not to forsake you. He makes that promise. He said, you're the apple of my eye. You are the pinnacle of my creation. He says all these things about us. He says, I love you. He says, you were purchased at a price. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son for you. We have all these promises, but we let these voices in our head drown them out. And guys, in this time, I want you guys to think about what God actually says and who he actually is. So let's pray. God, we love you so much. And Lord, as we close tonight, I'm thankful that I have a relationship that's secure no matter what. That doesn't depend on me being good enough, but it solely depends on me being your child. And God, tonight I just pray that wherever we are, we can realize that you're present. That you're right here with us. And when we go home, you'll be right there. And when we wake up in the morning, you'll be right there. And all we have to do is turn and open our arms and you'll be there. And God, I pray that we can live in the faith knowing that whatever we do, if we trust you, you'll always be there and you'll always help us. You'll be our cheerleader. You'll be our provider. And God, our ways will align with your ways and we'll grow and we'll become people who can trust in you and who are very successful because we're doing things we love. God, we love you. For seeing them.